In yesterday's video about the energy behind the words we speak, I referred to the roller coaster. The roller coaster of emotions that we can go through, of experiences that we can go through as entrepreneurs, as creatives. That's natural. And, we're not looking to make that stop. We're not looking to make it a flat line. But if we understand the dips as much as we desire the highs, we can ride that roller coaster in a much more effective way. And I wish I had understood this a long time ago, because it would have made such a difference. It's very natural, for us as humans to think, oh, the highs are fantastic and I don't want the dip, or to think if there is a high, then there has to be the dip. And, there's a lot of psychology around that too, like when we have upper limits, for example, to our joy. Like sometimes we will sabotage ourselves because we're used to a certain way, it's so familiar, and we unknowingly may stop something because it's kind of getting too good, right? So there's a lot of information around that. But what I want to just focus on for this moment, just a very short video, is to reframe the dips, and by even allowing them instead of waiting for them to happen to us. And so, for example, say we've risen up and we're like, for example, I had a couple of days that just felt like super, like everything was just, I was energized, I was inspired, I felt creative, I was getting things done. It just felt really expansive, and I absolutely love that space and energy. There's a part of me that wants to live in it all the time. And then suddenly there was a day when it kind of started to go down, and it wasn't necessarily that anything had shifted. I was putting my attention on things that were a little more challenging. I involved way more thinking and brain power, and it was something really new for me, and there was challenge, and I was in total enjoyment. So there was an aspect of it which you can just say, oh, you know what, it's something that you don't like, or you're not, it's not as easy for you as the other things that you were focusing on. So that can be practical. But I think what can happen is that there is also the energy dip to allow the contraction to happen, because it is a contraction that then allows the initiation of a new level, of a new energy bursting forth. And since I had gone into an expansion, the next phase is a contraction. And that contraction could just be simple. So for example, after having those days, I could have then just kind of slowed down and softened and relaxed, and kind of taken it easy to allow that contraction to happen, to choose the contraction. And then when the energy started picking up, then start using it in, whether it was those challenging pieces that I wasn't, finding so easy, but then I would have been in an expanding phase, so they probably would have been easier for me, or whatever else that I was now ready for. Right, so these are all moments where we can make a new choice, rather than be, a victim to it, rather than say, oh, every time I have all this success, suddenly it has to crash down, or I have this great feeling, and then it has to crash down, right? So that's a thought pattern. That's a mental way of perceiving the experience, instead of going, wow, it rose just like a wave, and then the wave falls and releases, and then it comes up and then it releases, right, on the shore. And so it doesn't mean that we have to have a negative experience in the dip. It could just mean a slowing down, a relaxing, a even contracting to kind of feel that and sense that, knowing that that's where the expansion is birthed. And so this sometimes, these things are just things that we can remind ourselves of when we go through ups and downs. And, in some teachings, they will say things like, when you are in that down, you are in that contraction, then, celebrate it. Like, just like, oh, wow, like I am here. I get to be here. I get to experience this. It's a part of life. And this means that there's going to be another expansion coming up at some point, right? Like, we don't even have to think about it or worry about the timing. We just know, like, that's just the flow. That's just natural cycles taking place. And it's like having some money saved, so that when you're in a dip, you have that, and you don't have to stress extra out. You don't have to stress out extra. Versus if you say we're on that high, you made a whole bunch of money, used it all, next thing you know, it was a quiet time, and you don't have a penny to your name, right? Like, that's dramatic, right? So it's understanding that the cycles do happen. And so when we're in that bounty, and this can be energetically and emotionally, then we soften and we stop like demanding and being greedy in the sense, oh, let me get the next piece, so make sure I don't fall down. So instead, actually letting go and relaxing, and knowing that the energy is going to pick up. And the more you're able to do that and relax at those times, instead of freaking out, instead of tensing up, instead of getting into a lot of lower emotions of anger and frustration, like literally to maybe take a few more time outs, take that rest, do something that is nurturing of you, do something that allows you to take things a bit more slowly or peacefully, so that when the energy starts rising, as I said, then you can direct it according to what's important to do next. So experience that for yourself. Try it out. Notice. I mean, some people are very steady people, and they are also steady, but then they also may control. Some of them may control what happens so that they can remain steady, right? And there's other people who have more ups and downs, right? They're more influenced by the energies around them as well as within them. And so for that kind of person, it's much more important to understand how to work with that, instead of feel like I have to become somebody who's always of this kind of stable emotional nature, because that may not be your nature. That may not be the way you even like thrive, right? Emotions can be delicious, right? The dark brings the light to more light, right? So there's different ways of looking at it. So again, I'm pointing towards ways that instead of beating yourself up, trying to say, I have to change and have to become somebody else, how can I actually use who I am to its best? Because if you were out there trying to research highly successful people, you'll find people of all situations and all ways, and who came from really tough times, and just use that to fuel themselves, and other people who came from great times and then built on that and grew through that, right? Like, it's all over the place. So there's no formula for the person you have to be. But if you trust you are meant to be you, and you can create into more growth and more empowerment, and obviously strengthen yourself, and develop new abilities, do all the things, then you're going to be much more gentle on yourself. And when we're gentle on ourselves, then we can actually think clearly and make new decisions, instead of feeling like, again, there's something wrong all the time. There's something wrong with me. Why can't I just do this? Why can't I be one of those early risers who gets up and gets everything done and, works out and like everything's perfect, right? Not everybody chooses a life like that. And if it works for you, awesome, right? I'm not trying to put that way down necessarily either, if it is more natural for a person to operate in that way. But most people who want to live a more holistic life tend to have a different flavor to life, a different way that they operate that isn't just linear. It allows the cycles. It uses things for their maximum benefit. And when things are, slower or quieter, it understands that that's okay. It's not a threat. And keeps moving forward. So I'd love to hear if you operate on a different cycle than the most people around you, and if so, what kind of things do you do that support you? Or if you have a question on this is my cycle, but I find it's really tough, then feel free to ask a question as well, and I'll do my best to answer it. So take that into your week. Discover what really has you thrive. What energizes you. And then on the tough days, because there are always tough days, relax and see what happens when you allow yourself to shift into that new energy of ease and gentleness.